Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 7th, 2020 edition of the Cyber Insecurity stream. Apologize for the pause of dramaticism there at the very beginning. I was checking all of the dials to make sure that I'd done all the dials right before I went live. My name is Neil Bridges, as always, and thank you for joining me for today's chat today's stream, rather. Welcome to all of our new joiners. Welcome to all of our regular visitors. Welcome back for another awesome cyber and security stream. As always, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, you can catch us here from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We are here to elevate the conversation around cybersecurity. What exactly does that mean? We have a real problem in our industry where we don't have real conversations about the topics that affect our ability to secure people, data, and companies. And so to that end, because cybersecurity is ever-changing, it's an ever-changing landscape, our goal is to really focus on multiple aspects of that industry. Yes, we'll be talking about things like red teaming and blue teaming. You're not out of your league if you hear those types of terminologies. We also discuss cyber risk, impacts, industry impacts of the current landscape, really the art of the possible when dealing with today's cybersecurity issues. Whether you're an experienced veteran, whether you're new to the field, whether you barely know how to spell cyber, or whether you're somebody who was born in cyber, this stream is absolutely for you. We are here for you and for everyone to participate and learn from our community. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. With that in mind, we regularly try to have professionals from all across the industry participate in the stream. Tonight, I am super excited. If you saw my Instagram story, my LinkedIn story, the tweet, I'm super excited for tonight's guest. My good friend Rick McElroy, I'll give his introduction on the next slide as usual, is here for tonight's stream. As always, we do have moderators in chat. I'll be answering questions on stream. Our special guest is here to answer your questions on stream. Remember always that your questions are very important for us. It is really the prime value that comes from this stream being live. And so ask them at any point in time. Ask them about any topic, whether it's something that we're covering on stream, whether it's top of mind, and we'll do our absolutely best to address them. We do broadcast via Twitch for our regularly scheduled broadcast, but you can find our videos either on the video section of Twitch or by going over to our YouTube channel. If you do go over to YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscription button and turn that bell on. Those of you who are watching and are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we do that to 25% of you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe and hit that dingy little bell, right? As I mentioned, we are here for you, the community, and so with that in mind, we do strive to bring you the most intriguing opinions, points of view, and conversations in the cybersecurity industry every stream. We appreciate all of our followers. We appreciate all of our subscribers. Subscribers do get early access to some of the special things that we do have going on. We do have new sub emotes that are up for our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. You probably see them if you scroll up in chat. We do have the super awesome Tier 3 Hackerman sub emote that is loaded. Festivus, thank you very much for the resub, for the Tier 1 resub for 3 months. Dude, thank you as always. Glad to have you around. We have had a couple people donate to the stream already. I want to make something abundantly clear when it comes to donations. Any and all donations that are donated to the stream will immediately be sent to the Wounded Warrior Foundation. We thank all of our vets for their service and sacrifice, and so if you would like to support the stream that way, you can head over to the About section and drop a donation. Obviously, no commitment to do that. You can also head over to Wounded Warriors and do that as well, and go bypass us completely. We're no issues there. There's no obligation, obviously, to do any of these. We are going to continue to deliver all this content to you, but obviously any contributions, subscriptions, and things like that do directly go to supporting the stream, and so we always appreciate all of those. And so with those logistics out of the way, it is my absolute, utter privilege and pleasure to introduce our guest for tonight, Rick McElroy. Rick is a cybersecurity strategist for VMware Carbon Black, but he's previously held roles, CISO roles at many organizations. He's also spent time as a U.S. Marine. And so, Rick, thank you for your service and your sacrifice, sir. You can get to his LinkedIn profile in chat by using the exclamation point LinkedIn, unless I forgot to update it, in which case I'll drop it in personally. As a reminder, Rick is here in his unofficial capacity, and his opinions are his and his alone and not necessarily endorsed by his employer. And so, Rick, again, on behalf of all of my viewers, thank you very much for being on tonight's show. And would you like to say a few words or expand upon your experience a little bit?
Dude, yeah, first off, I'm super excited. This is pretty awesome. We got live chat going on. And dude, like you set it up before we jumped on, let's have a conversation about InfoSec. Just a little bit of background. I've been doing this 22 years now. It makes me feel old. Like I feel really old when I say that. But yeah, so I started off on the red team side of the house, started breaking into companies, teaching them how not to have that happen. Did that for went over to Booz Allen and Hamilton, did that for the Department of Defense. And then my wife was like, "Hey, if you could stay home a little bit more, we have a small kid." And I really started to reflect on how easy it was for the attackers. So I was like, defense is harder. I'm going to start building programs, and so I did that, and then ran into Carbon Black as a technology. Really liked what they were up to, and then talked the founders into hiring me and allowing them to go start other companies. So that's my great story that I like to tell about that.
That's awesome. We were chatting in the green room, in the virtual green room, if you will, before we oh yeah, by the way, before I get too far into this story, chat, just in case you didn't see, Rick has decided to partake in some whiskey, some bourbon in today's stream. Rick, you're about 2 hydrates behind, 3 hydrate behind now. So you've got to catch up on some of those hydrates. But as always, make sure chat you're utilizing those hydrates on a pretty liberal basis. But we were chatting in the green room, and one of the I've known Rick for probably what 3 or 4 years now that we've been talking at conferences together. And before COVID, one of the stories that we were talking about that I thought was really interesting that I wanted to share with our guest is DEF CON, or no, excuse me, it was DEF CON last year when they had the VetSecCon Village. Hadn't seen Rick for, gosh, it was probably almost 9 months between when I'd sat on a panel with you at Connect in Q1 of that year, and then when we had DEF CON at the in August, and Rick comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder and is like, "Hey Neil, what's going on?" And we just kind of almost immediately connect and just start chatting with each other, regardless of the fact that it had been almost 9 months that we had seen each other. And I share that story because I think that's what's awesome about our community is that, and I think you said it best when you said it in the green room about not seeing friends for 9 to 12 months and then reconnecting with them at conferences.
Yeah. I think if people know me, they know I'm about the people. Because like people power technology, we write it, we put it in, we maintain it, we secure it, like we do all those things. But I think for a long time in the community, it just wasn't. Like we just didn't talk a lot about about all that stuff, right? And so I've been super encouraged. Like I would say probably the last 7 or 8 years by like just people's willingness to talk about stuff. Like no, even people that you see on Twitter aren't perfect at reversing all the things, right? And just getting more human about all the stuff. And that's been it's been a pleasure to see in the industry.
Absolutely.
I really dig it.
Absolutely. Therson wants to know what kind of whiskey you're drinking in chat. So
4 Roses.
4 Roses. Good choice. Good choice. Awesome. Real quick, heading back over to some of the community type stuff that we've got going on. Just in case you missed Monday's stream, we do have some good news. Our cyber insecurity emotes did get approved by Twitch. You can now find a whole series of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 emotes listed in your chat window. You can use the hacked planet score down there as well to unlock random emotes for 24 hours. Obviously, the tier 1 emotes, you can see, look at the crumbs dropping in the tier 1 emotes. I'm super happy for the tier 3 emote, the very elite Hackerman emote for tier 3. Digging that one. We did have a joke last week from Exploits regarding the Johnny 5 emote. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Johnny 5 emote approved yet, so we have a generic robot emote that's down there as well that you can use in place of the Johnny 5 one until we get the Johnny 5 emote approved. Speaking of hacked planets, I see Crumbs is in chat. I want to thank our elite sauce hacker. Crumbs was taken for his amazing idea to rename the hacked planet score to the hacked planet score. Again, as a reminder, if you check down there at the bottom, you start to see people really start to turn in some of those hacked planet scores and things like that. Don't forget, you, the community, controls when we do our next giveaway. We do tons of these giveaways all the time. We still have tons of hacker gear and whatnot to give away. And so we've decided to give the power back over to the community when it comes to doing these giveaways. And so as of today, we're about 18% towards our monthly goal for our hacked plant score. We've got 16 days left. So you guys got to get on it if in terms of turning in those hacked planet scores if we want to do a giveaway for this month. Lots of different ways that you can contribute to the score. Turning in the points is obviously the biggest way to do it. We saw a lot of hydrates. We've seen a couple stretches so far. I see somebody suggest a random poll. We'll look at a way to get that random poll in there. Look at it, got some another hydrates going on there. We do still have tons of hacker gear to give away. I've got a couple hack fives and some turtles and things like this I'd love to give you. Obviously, we continue to onboard sponsors. INE training, which those of you who have been part of the INE beta test, we do still have tons of training that we can obviously give away as part of this as well. And as we continue to bring on new sponsors, we'll look for ways to pass those benefits on to everybody. Like I said, we love giving this stuff away to you guys, and so looking for ways to do that. I see the beta's cool. I'm glad you're into the beta. If anybody's got anything they want to DM me about the beta, Pineapple Security Guru guy. Sorry, my brain went a little faster than my mouth went on that one. As a reminder, we have been invited November 7th. Make sure you mark your calendar. We have been invited to be part of Secure West Virginia Conference. You can hit !Secure WV to get details on that. Normally, that wouldn't be a big deal for us, but obviously, we're going to do something pretty huge and special for that stream. They're expecting over about 500 people to attend that conference virtually, and so we're obviously hoping to see some of those people on the stream that night. We have managed to secure former Air Force operator. He's the creator of the SANS Industrial Control System courses. He's also the founder of Dragos Inc. Mr. Robert Lee is going to be our special guest on November 7th for that November 7th Cyber and Security stream. And so if you've not had the chance to see or meet Rob or talk with him, he's got an amazing perspective. He's literally pioneered industrial control system cybersecurity in our industry. He's consulted with some of the biggest Fortune companies that are out there. He's been on Vice's Cyber War series and consulted with them as well as hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and of other accolades and things like that. And so you don't want to miss a chance to hear from him and pick his brain at Secure West Virginia. Some other things.
Neil, can I just plug him real quick?
Yeah,
too?
Go for it.
Just real quick. I think Dragos is now like they're the definitive thought leader in IoT security, like period, point blank. I think I just put a quote from him in a prezo I did like last week. If you looked at the work they did on eCans, it was pretty amazing, pretty good stuff. But if you don't or haven't listened to Rob Lee, I would definitely highly recommend that you do. So tune into that session.
The dude is an ICS IoT just madman. The things that he's done out there. So I'm super stoked to have him on there. It's gonna be amazing. Outside of that, other things that are happening at Secure West Virginia, obviously John Strand's going to be there from Black Hills Black Hills InfoSec. The WWHF is there. They're going to be doing courses from November 2 through 5th. Obviously, tons of good choices. Hit that ! Secure West Virginia to get some details on that. Are we at Office 363 yet? I think there's some trolling going on about Office 365 happening in chat. I missed something going on. Did we already?
That was my bad. Sorry, everybody, for taking that down today.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Looks like any suspects about Microsoft recent outages. Is that your fault? Did you do that, Rick?
I only committed PowerShell code. It should have been fine. I promise.
Now you're gonna make me look at through chat, make sure we've got any. Security Guru guys, he's a Carbon Black customer at business. He's happy to have you here. So you've got one of your customers here. Okay, yeah, it looks like okay. All right, good. All right, here we go. All right, cool. So with all that being said, let's take another drink because Festivus is going to make sure that we stay hydrated through this entire stream. Let's hop into the news. All right, cool. All right,
he's for the rest of us.
So what?
Festivus is for the rest of us.
Festivus is God. Is this going to be another dad joke episode? Jesus.
Oh, you didn't know you invited King of Puns onto the stream today?
Oh,
So no, let's get after it.
oh boy, it's gonna be a pun stream. My puns are terrible. I didn't bring a piece of paper with me though. All right, cool, awesome. In one of our favorite reoccurring topics, we're going to hit on this concept of consumer products and their hackability, right? So, literally today, it was disclosed that some researchers released it was a very funny piece of attack code called "Whereas the Remote." Speaking of puns and dad jokes and things like that, basically affecting the Comcast XR11 voice-enabled remote. I think I've got one of these hanging around. That I'm now going to have to smash up. With this going on, there's about 18 million of these units deployed across the entire U.S. Apparently, the hack doesn't actually require any interaction from the victim whatsoever, and apparently, it's very cheap to carry out. You really only need an RF transceiver and an antenna, and you can get it from up to about 65 feet away. And so really the kind of the bottom line to the hack is it was a failing of the integrity check in the use of the encrypted packets that's basically sent between the remote and the set-top box. And so this continues to floor me, Rick, every time we have this conversation. We've talked about it with Alexa. We've had Checkpoint on the stream and talked through some of the stuff that their researchers have gone through. And technology companies are so focused all the time on enterprise cybersecurity, yet year after year we see countless amounts of consumer products being compromised. Is there a world we live in where we can get technology vendors to care as much about security for their products that they put in their households as they do for their enterprises?
I think so. I think we're hitting that tipping point. I was encouraged. I don't remember, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, Consumer Reports started issuing 5-star consumer ratings for cybersecurity. I thought maybe the way that they factor some of those ratings could be improved, right? And all of the things that that vendors do to game those ratings. But I was like encouraged. I was like, oh, finally, people will be informed, like we do with our nutrition or our cars or anything else that we do, and we'll make better decisions on our technology.
And what
I don't
happened to
think
that?
that's I don't think that's proven true. I think the cheapest option almost always wins in a mass market. Um, but I will say this: what I've been encouraged by are recent conversations I've had with a bunch of CISOs. A lot of these CISOs are in manufacturing. A lot of them are in healthcare manufacturing, which is great for medical IoT devices. But their customers are all demanding that security gets built into this stuff. And so I think, look, sometimes the first run is good. Sometimes it needs some work. But I think the fundamental issue with the distrust is that like companies aren't open and honest about it generally. It's like, just admit that I can pick your lock and then give me a software code that gives me a better lock. Cool. Show me that you're trying to protect my privacy. Like, I get it. Okay, we're going to make mistakes. Like, things are going to leak. Like, the breaches are going to happen. Like, I don't blame any team for any set of circumstance, right? But it's like, be transparent about it. Just say that this is an issue. We're working to resolve the issue as fast as possible. We apologize. Move forward. So I think there's a a lot of work on the vendor side to rebuild that trust with what we're plugging in.
But see, I guess if I use your medical device, kind of conversation, a little bit pick on that. I think they're in a different scenario when you look at medical device products because they have to be culpable to the FDA.
It's fair.
When we think about things like an Amazon Alexa that can listen to your conversations, or a Samsung Smart TV, or a Comcast remote, or something like that, what is it going to take for us to get that same level of consumer consideration into those products that we have into a pacemaker or a neuro device or anything like that?
My honest answer to that,
Yeah.
mothers of America.
Yeah, you think so?
Like, look, Volvo sold a whole lot of cars because they were the safest car on the market. But I think people easily understood car wrecks. They don't easily understand cybersecurity wrecks. They don't easily understand the issues. And I'm not. I don't think I'm being flippant when I say that. Like, I need parents involved, right? I need parents to demand that their child's data isn't sold for ads, right? I need them to demand that things like open recording devices can't occur, or in the cases that they do occur, that a software code comes out in a reasonable amount of time and fixes it, right? But I think that's what it takes, is like people to realize that it's a safety issue, it's a privacy issue, and here's the problem: competing for the mind share right now. Like, could I get people to mobilize on a clear, direct legislative action that would protect all of us from consumer? That's tough these days. It's tough, right? Like, and so as much as we're advocates and we're out, so for me, it's if I can get parents to demand that organizations change their behavior, like I think that has a chance of winning, right? Because that's how I've seen change driven in other markets. Otherwise, like without consumer demand, and if we continue to buy these things and support the companies that make them, we'll get more of the same.
I think your mom's analogy is pretty good, especially when you use the Volvo thing. Is like you said, they can understand car wrecks. It's a very kinetic, type of thing that they can see. I guess, and you can kind of see this when you look at like the Ring doorbell, or some of the baby cam stuff that has happened to Ring over the last 12 months, where as soon as that stuff comes out, all of a sudden Ring's got passwords and multi-factor authentication on their web portal. I guess the question becomes is, you bring up the legislative part of that. What would you legislate about consumer privacy acts as it relates to consumer goods?
Well, look, I mean, I think CCPA is good. I think that's a good first start. I think GDPR is a good first start. Like saying who owns the data, right? Is it your data if you collect it on the device, or is it my data because I generate it? Like that's a fundamental discussion that we have to decide. The unfortunate part of that is there is a large amount of education and awareness that has to go into that to the general public. Documentaries are good to help. Marketing campaigns are good to help. But by and large, we're still trying to convince the general public that these are issues, and here's the risks of these issues. But honestly, for me, like, it was pretty enlightening when I went back to my mother-in-law's place outside of Boston. She's got an Alexa plugged in every room, and she loves it. Like it's literally changed her life. But when she calls me and says, like, should I trust it? Can I plug it in? And look, I'm not picking on Amazon as an organization or anyone else who manufactures this stuff, right?
Sure.
It's like consumers should just have trust that it's protected and it does what they want them to do when they want them to do it. And so I think the manufacturers have a long way to go to being committed to that transparency. And I think the other factor is we really need to monetize the internet differently than we are today. Like the fact that we do it through targeted ads is how we monetize most free things on the internet these days. If we don't fundamentally change that, I don't know that we have a hope of getting any of this stuff back.
What do you think is a fundamental change to how we monetize the internet that doesn't take away from its sense of people have gone to the extreme of saying that internet's a basic human right. How else do you monetize it if you don't do it via advertising?
This is the maybe multi-trillion-dollar question. I don't know that I'm smart enough to answer that. I'll be real honest, right? Sometimes I just go like, I know it's messed up, but I don't have a solve for X. A lot of times, like in InfoSec, like I have solves for X all the time, right? But this one, I don't know the answer to the question, but I think the conversation around it is needed, right? I think that's how we get smart people involved. That's how we, as consumers, say like I there was an interesting question posed, like, would you pay for Facebook? Right? Like if Facebook protected my data and did all the things they were supposed to, and I didn't have ads, would I pay for it? That's a really interesting question, right? And then you say, how many people would? So look, I think internally the companies, they're looking at answering that question. But as a community, we can demand the conversation occurs, and we can try to move the ball forward anywhere we can. But I don't know that, man. That's a complex one.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, for sure. I think getting back to this a little bit, right, is when we go back to this case a little bit, I think I want to pick on another thread about this, right, is that when you look at the timeline of this one happening, right, in this case, researchers disclosed the vulnerability all the way back in April 21st of this year, Comcast didn't begin to patch it until July 24th, and then didn't end up finishing with all of their patching until September 24th. And then, of course, we're just now finding out about it on October 7th. So, that's almost a 6-month laggard there between vulnerability disclosure and the public finding out about it, especially in something like a consumer good like this. And so, do you think that this is a case where it took too long for vulnerabilities to be patched and potentially disclosed?
I'm going to take those as two separate issues. I'm going
Okay.
to take the patching of how many devices? 8 million? Did you say?
18 million. 18 million devices.
Yeah. So I've ran quality assurance programs. I've ran like I don't necessarily believe time to delivery of patch was excessively long. And the reason why I say that is I'm not privy to how much QA is done, test environments, all of these things, right? Ultimately, I think a great metric for that for any organization is 30 days. But it's so tough with variations and does that firmware power 3 remotes or just one remote and it happened to be the remote with microphone? It's a wild variance. Disclosure, I think, is interesting. I think that's a topic that, like, what I want to hear from, I'm going to go back to my car analogy for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to hear from Ford is, hey, your airbags, sometimes when they explode, send shards into your face, and we're recalling that product, and you should probably have it replaced. Like, this actually happened to me, right? I'm like, okay, that sounds awful. I don't want to get in a wreck and have shards of metal sent into my face. Even at 15 miles an hour, that sounds crazy. I feel a sense of urgency, right, to go into the manufacturer to get my thing fixed because it's free, and that's what you do, right? To make it more safe for me to to feel like I can drive my car and again not get metal shards all over my face. So in this case, I'm like, hey, the metal shards are, you're recording my data. I don't know where it goes, what conversation, and then some remote person that's across the street at the park from my house can perform that activity. All right, like I feel like I want to move fast on that, but just tell me, like, look, consumers are savvy. Probably the savviest consumers we've ever had with technology, especially when you get into the younger generations. So it's like, again, how can we rebuild trust? We'll be open and transparent when something happens. Maybe give people some mitigations. And look, this is going to sound crazy, but maybe one of the mitigations in this case is if you are worried about conversations being recorded because you have work conversations now that it's COVID and sensitive things, like put some duct tape over this hole. I know that sounds great. Like, in a company may never do that, right? They may just say, like, don't have conversations in the room until we get this addressed.
Right.
But like, I'm a reasonable, just tell me so I can make decisions. And so for me, it becomes about a future or a present where organizations are just transparent and say, look, here's what happened. And I get it. There's lawyers involved and all that good stuff. Right. But
well, I think I go back to kind of the comment that you made before when it came to like consumers taking responsibility and being educated in the things that are kind of going on in their house, especially from like a sense of ownership perspective of what ownership of that data. I think you've got a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem where how can a consumer be smart enough to take responsibility for their own data because of a lack of understanding of what's going on there, such as just general ignorance around cybersecurity. And then if Comcast were to come out and say, hey, we've got this vulnerability where people can listen in on your conversations, you need to take your remote into the Comcast facility so they can patch it ASAP. Do you really think that we've moved the needle on consumer awareness enough for cybersecurity to where a larger portion of the populace would do that than maybe a couple years ago or something like that?
I think from an awareness perspective, certainly. I think Hollywood has helped us achieve that awareness, albeit we all know, like, we've all seen the things that are terrible, but like, you take a show like Mr. Robot, right, which is extremely loyal to what it actually is like to be a hacker, right? Like the code that's run, the type of attacks that are run. So I would say the general zeitgeist of America, and I think global Western nations anyway, are aware of the issues. Are they educated on the issues to a degree that they can push representatives, push legislators to to go protect things like our fundamental privacy, right? To make sure we don't have some random consumer device that's allowing anyone to gather intel on us, right? Whether that's us, right? It's not just foreign adversaries, right?
Hmm.
It's a, you know, I want consumers to have a higher level of trust in the technology that they use to protect these things. But I think for so long it's been this like background conversation that we haven't included consumers in, that it's really been a disservice to them. And then it takes people like yourself, people like myself, with a lot of time and experience to give the realities, right? Like I still get this question: should I use an iPhone or should I use an Android?
Right.
Right? And it's like, it depends. Like there's a lot of factors that it depends on, right? So I always have that tough time like recommending one thing over another, because at the end of the day, I'd like it to just I would like my privacy protected. I would like security to be built in, and I would like to not have to consider it. Like I think for most people who buy a car today, they generally believe that car to be safe. They generally believe that everybody's meeting about the same standards, right? Plus or minus, 15% on crash rate, survivability and all that stuff. But it's like they want the extras with a car too. It's just they want to be fundamentally protected if somebody gets weird, or if they fall asleep, or they so I think, look, technology manufacturers got to look at it the same way. Like it's got to be built into the overall product. I need brakes to go fast.
Yeah. You need brace to
So
go
if I want
fast.
to go fast with compute, I also need some brakes on that compute, right? But I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there. I thought we would have made more progress. I was very optimistic when I started in this industry. Very, I was very like, we're 5 years away from engineering ourselves out of this mess.
I
And
think it's funny you
we're not.
bring up the optimism, because I think that sentiment right there, especially when I got out of the military in 2013. I'd just done a stint in the Air Force doing offensive cyber for the Air Force and whatnot, and I think I was very, very optimistic when I went into my first job in the private sector, working for a bank of all things. And I thought I was going and building the red team for Fidelity, back when that happened. And I was I was very optimistic, and I was floored by just how terrible it was. Almost as bad as some of the worst nation states I think I'd ever seen or read about when I was in the military. And so I think that optimism that you talk about, I think I would almost like to see that on like a behavioral curve for most cybersecurity professionals, where they start like super optimistic about where they are in cybersecurity, and then to see how fast that drops off once reality hits them.
It's rough. And look, you've been part of those big things and part of big organizations that even have a mission to do it, right? Like our mission is to do security or information assurance or those things. And then you see how it's executed. And it's again, we have to remember that security is a human-based endeavor. End of the day, we write the tech, we maintain the tech, we tune it, we convince other people to buy it and put it in. Um, and I think any human-based endeavor is messy. But I have to say, like, I got really pessimistic for a period of my career where I was just like, this is all sucky. But I would say, like, probably the last 6 years, I've been super optimistic. Look, we have better tools than we've ever had. Um, we have better telemetry than we've ever had. We've definitely shrunken mean time to detect, which is cool to see, like as a ratio, right? So I do think we got our feet underneath of us as teams. Our hands are up. We're fighting the good fight. We just need some more gas to help us out, I think. But yeah, I need a big push from consumers and people with personal devices. That would be super helpful to my personal job.
We got a request for a poll inside of chat, so we're gonna start a poll for the best hacker movie, whether it's Hackers or Mr. Robot. So we're gonna let that poll run, and we're gonna go
This
back.
is a this will start an ideological war, because on one hand, I used to hate. I'm not even making this up. I loved it, then I hated it, like the movie Hackers. Right when I actually figured out what being a professional hacker was like, I was like, oh, what did they do with this movie? And so I went through this period of like, I didn't want to admit that I liked it, right? Um, but I love it. like when you go back and watch it, like I love it for what it is. It's a perfect 90s hacker movie. And
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
look at, then you say Mr. Robot, right? 4-year run. Dave Kennedy was an advisor. So many advisors
yeah,
on that show, right?
yeah.
Um, Perfectly executed from a hack perspective, perfectly executed from a drama. Like I love that show. I love that show immensely because it captured the zeitgeist of a lot of people, and myself included, who have felt those depression struggles.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The alienation struggles, like that stuff. And so I was just like, what a perfect time. But how far have we? If you measured the 25, I think it was 23 years between, or 22 years between Hackers coming out as a movie and Mr. Robot ending. That's really cool though. Like we have made progress, right? Like
Yeah.
not everything is Swordfish, which is a terrible hacking movie.
Not everything is swordfish.
Yeah, and look, there's an appetite for regular people who sit at home because there's no way that they generated the ratings that they did as Mr. Robot with just infosec people watching it,
Yeah,
right?
for sure, for
And
sure.
and so I was like, dude, people stuck with like unicorn and command line tools, like the security engineer and toolkit, like that for me, I was like, that's a win. Like the fact that they don't have to show some weird graphics to represent it as a win.
So the poll right now is split 50-50 between Hackers and Mr. Robot. You got a few more seconds to get your vote in for Hackers and Mr. Robot. Remember, you can use Hacked Planet Score and bits to sway that poll one way or the other if you want to make it into a competition. But let's hit a couple questions from chat. It won't happen to me, says the person a week before the technology they love is used against them.
Always. but again, I'll point back to humans being humans. They would do that about anything. My house isn't going to get broken into. I'm not going to get in a car accident. Like it's just how humans are, right? It just happens to be, I think our perspective is focused and laser focused on security issues.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened to the Computer Act of 1993? Doesn't that protect end users from companies? That's a good
Was
one.
that the Oh, uh, not the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I want to
No.
make sure I'm clear on.
Computer Act of Actually, I'm not familiar with that one.
So I would say sort of,
The
but
Computer
probably not
Misuse
really.
Act.
Yeah. No, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Actually, this is a good lead into my background, right? So if you're a longtime fan of hacking things, war games, I would argue represents not only the modern U.S. government stance on defense, but also offense, and those operations. Because President Ronald Reagan saw the movie, right? He didn't know that two of the people that worked for him were actually advisors on the movie. Saw it, freaked out, and said, "Is this possible?" And they said, "The techniques that we showed in are 100% possible." And then quickly, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was rushed in, which was probably a little overreaching, like in certain areas in the beginning. And now I think it's hit the right level. But no, privacy as it relates to our data, I don't think it's been considered until recent history.
Yeah. So it looks like Security Guru Guy pulled forward with the 4,000 channel point donation to make Hackers the winner of the poll by 83%. So
I mean, I get it.
Hackers over Mr. Robot.
Like I get it. Lord Nikon's my favorite, so I get it. Yeah.
Sec IT Guy says, I don't think general population really understands Snowden leaks until John Oliver Barney stepped through it using personal text messages as an example.
I would argue. Oh, okay. So that was a great episode. I did watch that, and it wasn't. How crazy can we get on this stream? It wasn't.
You can get all sorts of crazy. We try to refrain from very
It
extreme.
wasn't the
politics.
text messages. It was his uses of mails and certain pictures that they send. So I'll try to dress it up a little bit. I would say, by and large, though, to be quite honest with everybody, I think Joe Rogan nailed it with, like, he has so many listeners and so many followers. I think John Oliver hit a nice double, maybe a triple, but I think Rogan and his follow-up with Snowden is hitting that home run, because when you have 25 million people that watch it, it's just a matter of again, reaching the zeitgeist of the society, right? And
Yeah.
so I appreciate that he did that. And it's a very complicated issue. What happened? I understand both sides of the equation.
Now I got out right when Snowden dropped all of his leaks, and it was an aha moment for me where it was very much like holy cow, I just came from this world, and all of this stuff is now in the public eye.
Yeah, I worked for Booz Allen.
Mm.
I know a lot of people that were impacted. Um, Good people that just happened to be his boss and manager, or was the cleanup crew after all of the things, right? And so, um, if anything, the message from that is security and privacy is never black and white. I think it's a matter of perspective. Yeah, but there were deep impacts all the way around.
Hmm.
To in particular to Ed Snowden.
Mm. Um, Zero Sploit says that's because the back engineers don't know what happens on the front end, and some are not qualified to be in that position. I worked for Cablevision and Time Warner. It's an industry issue.
I don't disagree that it's just how we run shop. I don't disagree, and it's a challenge. I can't say that I have some better form of medicine because we've got some really smart people that work in engineering. We've got some really smart people that leach like I can't. And again, without being in someone's seat, I have a hard time like going like, oh, here's what I would have done about it. Um, but I think there's something to that, right? Which is the idea that during the ideation phase, during the development phase, that someone comes in and says, but what if somebody beats on this with a hammer? Like we know, but we know what adversaries are going to do. We know what the criminals are going to do. So that representation of having someone who says, but yeah, you intend for me to push this button so I can speak to my remote so that it does something, which is cool, right? We've all seen these movies, it's that's sci-fi future stuff. Like I can talk to a piece of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
and like I want that, but I want my privacy and security too. Like I'm that guy. Um, but but it's like, look, somebody's got to be in that room with the developers going like, I'm gonna hit this thing with a hammer until it does something it's not supposed to. And what if I do that? um, I think we have gotten better, because if you look at like public disclosure stats, if you look at what Google Project Zero has done to drive from point of disclosure to point of
Mm-hmm.
patch,
Mm-hmm.
it's been significant. And so I know it's easy as security professionals to be like, holy shit, we still got this giant pile of stuff we got to go work on. But like progress has been made, and I am encouraged by the progress.
So you mentioned like having them sit in with a developer and being like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of this thing. I mean, isn't that what I mean? I'm gonna be cynical here when I make this statement. I'm totally looking for a cynical response on your part, right? But isn't that what DevSecOps is supposed to be all about? Is making sure that we've got better security in our DevOps processes?
Oh, that's interesting. This is the problem with DevSecOps. Um, I have a different interpretation of what DevSecOps is.
Okay, go for it.
Dev DevSecOps for me is I have some PowerShell people on my team. I have some Python people on my team. I have some people who can maybe write Go. And I can build my own applications internally. I can build my own integrations, and I don't have to pay a vendor for it. But the like both of those are tied to different missions.
Hmm.
And so I do think you highlight something here, which is, what is DevSecOps supposed to be? Like, I mean, we've all seen the famous meme where it's like it's a unicorn pooping, right? And then DevOps, and then it's Sec DevOps with the scooper behind and I'm like, I don't know that we all have a clear definition of the same thing. So I think it should be part of the secure software delivery lifecycle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that function should necessarily, and this might be controversial, live inside of security. I think it's when I can cohort application developers to think the way I do, right? This is how I approached like application development. When I can get them to put on the mindset of what would someone do to misuse this thing, and then they can go relate that to their people, I feel like that got more progress than if I said to people, like I came in wagging the finger and said, don't do this or engineer your code this way. When a senior dev did it, like that was my win. And so I always went with like, how can I highly educate the senior people who are influential and get people to change their behavior?
Mm. So got another question from Tycho Bambo. I always mess up your name. Do you really think a company would change its policies to protect data, even if the public understood cyber issues without some type of enforcement from the federal government?
Yes. Yes. Because I think there's internal pressures and external pressures to a company, especially, and I'll credit Amazon for their customer first approach. They set a bar on that, and it's a high bar, right? I mean, we've all heard BZ, like everybody, customer says, well, what does that mean? Well, it means when people call them, they have an extraordinary experience compared to everybody else, right? So I think those bars have been set, and other companies have had to react as a just as good business practice, right? So I do think, again, companies are made up of people, and if the people inside the company care about the thing, the company will do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a CISO or an IT leader or an infosec leader, or if I just care about privacy inside it, then be an advocate for it. Go convince the influencers in your organization to help you on that journey. Because it ain't Neil, you know this, it ain't gonna be us alone, brother. Like we've been swinging against the world for 30, I mean, there's people who predate all of us, right? And so it's like we've been swinging against them, but we're not going to do it alone.
No.
When we'll do it is when a tip point of people agree that it's a fundamental right to have security.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental right to have private data. And look, Europe showed us the way. Unfortunately, it wasn't us leading the privacy discussion. However, I think like everyone in the US has benefited from that discussion overseas.
So I want to ask you something on that, but I want to come back to it because in 2x4, also known as Nate, inside a chat asked one that I think you and I have had. We got a stretch going on there. You and I have had some conversations over drinks before, and I want to kind of talk about this one. Is speaking of consumers, when is EDR for home use going to be a thing? And that's something you and I have talked about pretty extensively.
Yeah, so I happen to be privy to the EDR market and it's starting and those things. It's a cool topic. Look, EDR didn't exist. And then everybody kind of agreed that like, oh, this is the metadata you would need to put together the things to figure out what happened. So I can say this. EDR has moved from a standalone feature to now it's expected in EPP products, right? Like you're not going to go create some next gen defensive product without EDR in it, like moving forward.
So I think
like,
what you're saying is EDR has become commoditized.
Correct, right? And internally to Carbon Black, we talked like what. Like if you want to get down to like what's the goal of the thing? The goal of the thing is we're getting our asses kicked in cyber. How fast? Like I'm not making this up. How fast can we spread like good technology that actually records the thing so we can rewind the tape so we can figure out like all of that stuff, right? What I've been super happy about is this movement towards open sourcing things. So whether that's Facebook's OS query, whether that's folks that are like, hey, I just need a sensor, so let's open source. Like, but it's gotta meet these things. Like it's happening. It's happening in real time right now. Like, so for me, it's like, I would equate it to the same journey we've been on as threat hunters, which is a lot of people in the DoD understood threat hunting. A lot of people that worked for gov agencies understood it, but then we had to democratize it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now EDR, like if you can't check that checkbox in an EPP product suite, good luck. Right. So now I go, okay, cool. Here comes the second wave of any innovative market that's needed, which is the open sourcing of the market. Right. So I would say stand by. I think you're going to see a bunch of cool things in the open source market that'll help you out.
And obviously, I want you to make sure you answer this, the best way you can, without disclosing anything sensitive. But given that you see things like Trend Micro, other organizations moving towards into the EDR space and things like that, do you think that there ever is a play for some of the traditional EDR places or EDR vendors, to move into the NGAV space and start to move into that consumer space where we start to see Dell computers with carbon black on them, or a MacBook with Sentinel One on it, or something like that? Do you think that we're actually ever going to get to see something like that from the commoditization of EDR, or do you still think that it's really just kind of more not going to happen because you don't have that managed team behind you that can actually provide the value of the threat hunting service from having an EDR product on a consumer device?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? Like separating out threat hunting from EDR informing prevention technologies that closes the loop faster, which makes prevention better. I would say, and I'll separate out the advanced, like go get humans that understand the data. Like I believe in that. Like I'm a big believer in sometimes you can't be good as everything as a staff internal to a company, so you got to find great partners.
Right.
But if I separate out, like I need EDR data to make better prevention decisions. Period. Point blank. How I analyze that data, how I put it in a feedback loop into my prevention product. So look, here's what I think we've always said as a company, and what I've always said since I got here. I am so happy that EDR is now in all these other products, because I always needed it, brother. like I've run all those other tools for various reasons.
Yeah.
And I knew I was missing something, but here's the problem. I wasn't smart enough to go write it.
Yeah.
Like, frankly speaking, I just wasn't. I wish I was. I would have co-founded Carbon Black, right? But when I saw people who were like, and I was like, this made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Now, how do we fit this into inform all of these other tools, provide better context, all those things? Like, I'm personally, like, it's one of the things I'm happiest about working for this organization is like, we got to lead, I think, the industry on that. And not in a cocky way, but like in a way like was just needed, and we should have had this from Jump Street. Why don't we have it? And you've seen every vendor in the market react to it.
Yeah.
Microsoft is better with their telemetry now.
Yeah.
Period. Point blank. Like they've done amazing work over the last 4 or 5 years. Good. Maybe we just represented helping to push them in the right direction, right? Like if that was our big contribution to InfoSec, then we're happy to do it.
Well,
but yeah, I think it's expected now.
I think you bring up the Microsoft one, and I don't know if I've told this story to you or the listeners before, but I was at a executive business conference a number of years ago with Microsoft, and their executives came in and told us very explicitly. They were like, "Yeah, we absolutely watch everybody else in the marketplace, and wait for them to rise and fall and succeed and fail." And then we decide and pick the best of breed and put it into all of our products. And at the time, I was shopping around for EDR, and I was like, why would I ever partner with you, for my EDR product, knowing that you're 2, 3, 5 years behind, the people who are out there trying to be cutting edge and leading and things like that. And I think that it didn't favor them 3 to 5 years ago when I was shopping around for EDR, but now, to your point, if you're in a full Office 365 E5 licensing type scenario where you're not using, anything else other than, the latest and greatest, evergreen, Microsoft products, you really can't beat Defender ATP E5, in an enterprise.
Yeah, listen, this is one of the things that happens at awesome security conferences. I was leaving Mandalay Bay on Thursday at like 2:00. I'd wrapped up all the work stuff at Black Hat, and I was headed over to DEF CON. And I was in a taxi line, and as we do in security, if you're good people, you just talk to people around you. Guy asked me, kind of older guy, he's like, can I share a cab with you because you're heading over to Caesars? Absolutely. Like, we're both wearing the badges. Awesome. Turns out he was the guy that worked for Gates. Like, he was the security guy, right? And he's wearing Birkenstocks and tube socks. I'm not making this up. And a Hawaiian shirt. And so now I find out like we're on the ride over, we're stuck in traffic like everyone else. And I'm just like fascinated because I wanted to know what the hell was that like? Because we blamed you for so many things,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like, like if I would have known you as a human being back in 1998, oh, you would have been on my list, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to hear his perspective. You start to hear about how things work when they brought the Internet Explorer team in, when they brought the Office team in, and you're like, huh, I can relate to all of these stories. I kind of understand a little bit more. And so for me, weirdly enough, it came at this like weird time where Microsoft was changing who they were as an identity.
Mm-hmm.
They were hiring amazing talent. I mean, I know people working on Sentinel right now where I'm like, dude, you guys hired some hitters.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hope that it translates to awesome product for the rest of us. Cause look, end of the day, Neil, like I do care about the brand that I have on. I do care. Like I would never be disingenuous to customers and represent something that I didn't think
Of course. Of
actually
course.
benefit them. Well, like, man, as an industry, like the last 5 years have been dope. There's way better products that are cheaper. Like it's all cheaper cost now too, right? So like again, it's not all fixed, it's not all better, but dude, we're moving in the extreme right direction. Like like unfortunately, some companies still have a problem with bug bounties and security research, but generally overall, the major manufacturers have embraced that. Um, no one wants to be the company that allows a diplomat, a head of state, a government official to get popped
Right.
on their platform. Like that's bad. That's a bad day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I got to credit. You know, it's hard to pop in an iPhone. Like it used to. Like shit used to be easy. Now it's like, dude, you got to put some work. You got to spend some a major amount of money to do the thing that you want to do. Good, like that's all good for us,
That
right?
is. That
Like
is making it harder for the attackers.
yeah, so sometimes I do get pessimistic and I'm like, oh man, now ransomware is causing things and patient unavailability and um, but I have to do what an old boss of mine said, which is pause and take a step back, look back on how much progress has been made. And I mean, how many apps have two-factor authentication on them or multi-factor now?
Oh, and but compare that to like 2, 3, and 5 years ago when
5 years ago,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely, well said. Looks like I got another question. Sec IT guy says, do you think a big cybersecurity issue is our lack of standardization in job roles, capacity, capability, and certification? For example, a certified doctor has an expected standard of knowledge. Same with a lawyer.
That is an interesting question. So, I would say, as a generalization, I'd probably say yes to that. However, I know so many exceptions to that rule, myself included. Um, I think I generally say to security professionals, like, get in where you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how much knowledge you have. It- that's a tough one, Neil.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question, right? Like, how much? Like, I do think there should be a certain standard when you present yourself as a person who's going to go build a program for an organization. I do think that because the organization is trusting you to be ethical, they're trusting you to keep secrets, they're trusting you to protect their brand. And I personally, I think that means something. It's probably why I've stayed in InfoSec this long is that commitment to an organization to do that. Um, but I, but then it's a little exclusionary too because I'll be honest, most of the shit that we do comes on the job.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of classes that have helped me theoretically. There's been some classes that have helped me in the real world. Mostly those classes were technical, but they don't teach you how to navigate politics or paperwork or, convince a C level. Like there's no class on convincing a C level to go invest $16 million annually in security.
I wish there was. It'd make our lives a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Maybe we should do that.
Maybe we
That's our
should. That's right. That's it. We're doing the cyber insecurity CISO certification right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I do believe in certifications generally. I think some of the problem with some of our certifications have been the bodies of people who represent those and make those. Um, but like folks like Wim Rames and like other folks have gotten onto the ISC2 boards.
Hmm.
So there's way more technical people representing. Um, so my advice to anybody who sees a issue is like jump into that issue and try to fix it. And the industry's, in my opinion, fairly responsive to people who want to put it in work.
I think Edward's got a. It looked like that question generated a lot of conversation in chat. It looks like Edward made a good counterpoint to that one, right? Once a doctor knows the human body, it isn't changing, and cybersecurity is the exact opposite of that. It's like you can know something today, and then a new vulnerability comes out tomorrow that fundamentally changes how you view security in an organization. And so
Yeah, I would use the pandemic as an example of how that broke down. There are new things that occur to humans. Ebola, H1N1, SARS, COVID-19. Those were all, and look, no one's hopefully writing those things and designing them to bypass the human immune system to have better efficacy, like we do on the red team side of the
right,
house, right?
right.
But arguably, hackers in the red team community is the immune system for us that help us, strengthen our defenses, and um, so it does happen in the medical field, albeit um, not not as massively. Like there aren't 100 of those things that come out in the same month.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if you take the 3 months between shadow brokers, WannaCry, and NotPetya, that was a lot of shit going on in the industry.
That was
right?
a lot of shit that happened in the industry all at once. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're like, wait, what? These tools we had never heard of are being used, right? And they've been, and then so it does happen. I think it just happens faster to us.
Yeah.
Like we have to adapt faster than any other industry.
Yeah.
For sure.
So then you mentioned certs and things like that, and look, there was conversation going on that said like a baseline cert, or a standard baseline body of knowledge that can be agreed upon. It's one of the reasons why CISSP is so highly requested. You mentioned ISC squared and them hiring more technical folks. What kind of is your take on without throwing anybody under the bus or anything like that? But I mean, for us as practitioners, and again, we've got a good mix of everybody on the call. We've got practitioners, we've got folks who are in risk. We've got a couple CISOs that are on stream and things like that. What is that delineation then in the value that something like CISSP has from a cert perspective versus, to your point, some of the more getting in there and getting your hands on stuff type certifications?
I'm going to relate that to my personal experience, Neil, for this one. Here's the way I saw it. There was no certification for InfoSec. Frankly speaking, I went after the MCSE route because it was like, and don't get me wrong, I was certified in Solaris operating system. This is going to date me. Like the original NetApps that came out, Extreme Switches. Like I could name a number of technologies that some people have seen, but most people haven't these days, right? And so here's what it was for me. How can I be employable?
Right.
And so if the majority of people were running Solaris, well, guess what? I'm going to go try to be an expert at Solaris, right? If the majority of people pivoted all of a sudden in a year to Linux, oh shit, well, now I got to go pivot to this new thing, right? So I think they are good. I think that they're needed, especially when you look at what a company expects from a risk management professional. So again, my own journey was a technical professional who became a risk management professional, who became an executive professional. Right? Like it's not unique. I don't say that like it's just a journey that a lot of people who've been doing this a long time have went through. And so all of a sudden you're a technical person and you're in the boardroom with the CEO and you're like, what training prepared me for this?
What did I take that prepared me for this moment in my life?
My honest answer to that, all the shit I went through in the Marine Corps. Like being able to improvise, being able to adapt, being able to tell a good story, not being intimidated that other people are higher ranking than you when you have to, and then when I went to Booz Allen. So imagine I leave the Marine Corps and like no one would have gave a shit what I had to say honestly, like my gunny cared, but like no one else cared. I was an enlisted grunt. Fast forward 3 years, I'm now briefing the chief of naval operations.
and all you did was go to be a civilian.
And busted some systems up and had to explain how I busted these systems up, right? Yeah. So it's like, did anything prepare me for that? Honestly, could I have went to a class for that? No. But I had some people who gave me runway to like go do things, fail, try to do them in the best interest of the mission, the goal. And then you're just there, right? So I wish there was some class for like life experience. There's not. But um, I do think certifications are helpful. However, my caveat to that is, um, if you think the thing you need for your first job is a CH or a SysM or a SysP or a no, do you have the mindset? Do you have the passion? Do you want to work at 3 a.m.? Because sometimes this job's gonna like
Can
as a
you
hiring.
can you say that again? Because I think we've got a ton of people who need to hear that again, who are trying to decide what their first cert is to get into cybersecurity. Can you just repeat what you just said there? Because I think it's very important that people hear that.
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is do the work. I can't shortcut the experience, right? And so I think there's people who think like if I get this cert, I'm employable. Here's what I want to hear as a hiring manager. Like I love this thing that we do. I don't know how to do all the things that we do, but I'm willing to learn. And every day I'm gonna show up and do work. Like for me personally, like those are the people I brought on my team. Those are the people that I invested in. And in absolutely no way, shape, or form did they all have the on paper. Like I had to do so much work with HR to tell them don't weed people out based on certifications or did they go to college. Like that's ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
to say people can't do infosec without a 4-year university. Like so for me, I was like, I want to change this. Like I want to change the perception of like who does this. Look, I still point to this case. One of the best threat hunters that I believe Carbon Black has ever turned out as an organization prior to joining our organization was in retail sales. And I'm not making that up either. That sounds like
Wow.
a crazy story. She
Wow.
comes over to us motivated. She had something happen while she was an employee at that organization that made her question the technology, that made her pull the string, right? That cuckoo's egg example, right? Like those things. And then took the opportunity and maximized it, right? So again, if I'm hiring entry level people, I don't expect you to have all the on paper stuff because there's no on paper stuff. We make this stuff up all the time. Look, EDR wasn't a thing until and I could tell you the 6 people who went and wrote it. It wasn't a thing until someone said, "Why doesn't this exist?" And then everybody else said they were crazy, and then they went and did it. And like none of them started a company before, right? They were on the target acquisition team for the NSA. Like that's what they did before, and then they figured it out. So figure it out. Like just jump in and find somebody who will provide you a starting point.
Well,
And
so
I think
so
a lot
so
of us
so it's interesting
are
that you
into
talk.
that.
It's interesting you talk about that from like a new person perspective. Napier asked in chat is, how do you pivot? Right, my specialty is in a market leading product, but of course someday that product won't be the number one anymore. And so, any tips on how you went through that, or how do you go through that type of pivot?
And I'll tell you this, dude. Look, I come from the offensive and defensive side of the house. In my career, and I can tell you this before I took this job, I was adamant about not working for a vendor. I'm gonna say that again, Neil, because I think it's important. The biggest advocate for what we do was adamant about not working for a vendor.
But why?
I
Why is
thought,
that?
yeah, I'll give you my mindset. I thought it would jade you. I thought that I should be able to openly speak about the issues that are facing defenders and help them make that better. And I thought when you put on a polo with a certain vendor, you get jaded about that,
Mm,
right? Because that was my experience
mm-hmm.
in the industry, right? Like as somebody who was being sold to constantly, right? Like so it was my own jadedness, it was my own things, and I had a lot of conversations when I came over here about where are the boundaries. I'm here to represent our community. I'm here to be a voice of the defenders. Are we cool with that? Are we not cool with it? And I got very lucky again that I found an organization that said we need, like, our community and the people who write this software need the voice of the operators. And so I was encouraged that like it was open. Like I'd come in and be like, why are we putting this thing here when it should be here? It seems a little weird because my job, it would do this. Um, I can say, and I don't think this was me, I don't think this was any particular thing, but over the last like 7 years, you can, how many good defenders, Neil, do you know that have went to work for manufacturers? And like manufacturers gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
Like software, like our software shit's gotten better because it's now tied to people who did the jobs.
Right.
And so I now encourage people who are doing jobs for organizations who are CISOs to like just be open to that. Like a vendor will listen to you. And again, it's my unique experience, but I'm so happy that I landed in a place where like they get it. Like no one tells me to shut up when I'm like, hold on, our people are using our product like this and they want it to look like this.
But I think that's the key right there, right? Is, and I think you hit on it, right? Is, being true to what you're doing in that vendor space, right? If you're going to go work for a vendor, hopefully it's because you believe in a product, or you believe in the mission, or you believe that it could do some good in the world. And so you have to be able to have that feedback loop, if you can, into the organization that says like, look, here's the pulse of the industry. I think that's what I've always thought is very cool about your job, is you're always out there getting that pulse of the industry, and then taking that pulse of the industry and being able to feed it back into the organization, be able to say like, look, here's what's happening outside the bubble sphere of R&D and business that's happening inside the organization.
Yeah, I saw an issue. I saw a bunch. I mean, I saw. Listen, I'm not gonna make bones about it. Like there was cool things to build my personal brand too, right? Um, but like overall, I was like, yo, we are far like manufacturing and people who write software are far too disconnected from the people who use it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, my jadedness was the infosec community, and so I was like, if I could go work on that problem, right? And again, like Neil, I don't have a big enough ego where I'm like, I need to do these things in the product, but like influence the people who do that stuff. Influence the people who are going to go start other cybersecurity startups, who are going to go write other code, who are going to like, wouldn't that be cool if we were just more attached to the outcomes that we wanted to drive from the people writing the platforms that are driving those outcomes? And it's, that's what I can say. Like, that's where I get my juice in the job, is bringing back that field intel. We've had plenty of conversations, other folks, and then I get to bring that back. And then I see that taken seriously by leadership, put back into the product. Like, yeah, we need more of that. So I would say, don't think that you have to have infinity experience in software development to go influence software development, especially in the security space.
That's a good point. Looks like you got a fellow Marine in chat. SecIT guy says, shit, Simplify, brother, 2010 to 2014. You got another hoorah in there.
Oh wow, you just got out. He like that. He's just fresh.
Yeah,
like,
6 years. Yeah, he's been out for about 6 years now. Oh, and he's going to challenge you a little bit. He's going to say that NSM actually kicked EDR off. You wanna tackle that one?
He said NSM.
Yeah, like NSM kind of kicked EDR off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make an argument that FireEye did it.
Oh, with God, NX or whatever it is.
Right, you could, because that's the. Yeah, no, like NSM, like I put that in the realm of like, okay, like, but I can tell you the exact story where EDR came from. You want to hear it real quick?
I think the viewers would love to hear this. Absolutely.
I promise it'll be real quick. So
it doesn't have to be
anybody
real quick.
who's
this is yours. Go for it.
Anybody who's been around InfoSec a while or hasn't, just Google a thing called Operation Aurora. If you remember Operation Aurora, there was a giant, large nation state. I won't say who they are, but
China.
I won't say who it is, but they make a lot of things. And they attacked government entities, commercial entities, and like deep, like the wounds were deep. It was bad. And so a team of professionals were brought together. They were incident responders and they were offensive folks. And they were tasked with figuring out what the hell happened. And that team came up to the conclusion that, like, we don't have enough data to actually say what happened. We should create a tool that has all the data that we would need to make these, like, to figure out the root cause, to figure out what was the initial vectors, what was done, like all of those things. And so I would say, like, EDR really was the birthchild of Operation Aurora, in my humble opinion. Albeit other people had seen that there was a need for better telemetry on the endpoint, they didn't go out and do it. And and then 8 people did, and people told them that it wasn't achievable with, like, there's no way you can stream all this data off an endpoint, like all those things, right? And then they brilliantly blew through it. But what I'm most encouraged about is, if you looked at firewall evolution, that was slower than endpoint. Like it just was, right? And so, look, there was other companies that were already doing behavioral anomaly detection, looking at other sources, whether those are DLP sources, USB lockdown. Like, they were already starting to put data pictures together. I would just argue that the data was incomplete, and then EDR sort of, or at least this representation of EDR was a complete data set that you can now build on and add other things to. And yeah.
No, I was around during Operation Aurora. Google was a victim there. I think Lockheed Martin was a victim there. I remember that one pretty extensively, and that was a
Here's a good piece of advice: if you get hit by a cyber attacker, immediately name it an operation, and and then you're a victim.
Yeah.
Not culpable or negligent.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to pick on something, because we got down kind of a path, specifically around EDR and technologies and things like this, and I think it's actually a really good segue for something that I think you and I had a conversation, several weeks ago, kind of about this topic. And so I kind of want to poke the bear with you again with this one a little bit, and I want to bring up the concept of XDR. It kind of started to float around RSA this year, and we've seen, a lot of people start to, kind of culminate around this concept of XDR. And then you've got this, this article that comes out today that says, really the grabbing headline, right, is that CISOs are swiftly adapting the transition of EDR to XDR, and the way that they're classifying XDR, really is this cross generation of detection and response, really to try to solve the problem of, how do we not limit detection and response to only, laptops and endpoints in that realm. And so I guess I get back in, and the concepts that we've talked about technology evolving, looking at things differently, trying to solve different problems, and some of the problems that EDR has solved and things like this. I think I look at this and I'm incredibly skeptical, because I don't think anybody has really defined, what XDR means for us in this industry. And when they talk about, cross-generation detection response, and changing the detection response to not only focus on endpoints, but to also focus on, like cloud entities and things like that. Isn't that what most SOCs, security operations centers, are supposed to be doing by having a centralized SIEM and collecting that log information and using it across platform? I mean, how is this really any different than what organizations either have been doing or should have band doing for years anyway?
This is a great question, right? I saw a lot of Twitter blowback on XDR during Black Hat. Like, and the one that I remember the most, and if you're in the audience or watching this, forgive me for not remembering the handle, but someone said, "Isn't XDR just like what we're already attempting to do?"
That's right.
I do think that's the case, right? Like, what did I always beat up my managed security providers for? Not having the context of the alert. What did I beat up my firewall vendors? I was like, why can't my firewall vendors talk to my endpoint vendors and speak the same language? And then, because honestly, all I really wanted was anomaly detection.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me when something's bad and give me high confidence in it, and then my team can focus on projects, because we got shit to do, right? Like, but I don't want my team bogged down in 3 to 10,000 false positives. So I think the way I think about XDR is contextual security. So if I had the ability to log all of the right data in a uniform fashion and then provide a uniform set of threat intel over that data, I can interrogate it. Like I don't, yeah. So look, here's the answer. I know bad guys do some network things, and some of those things are precursors to endpoint attacks, and vice versa. But like having rich telemetry that I can then say how my environment has changed and drifted, that's all CISOs really want to know, right? It's like, is it an oh shit moment, or is it business as usual, right? Like that's the perfect world we don't want to live in. And so when I think about XDR, for me, it becomes about like the other vantage points that you can contextually enrich endpoint or network data or identity data. But ultimately, I believe it's assuming it's trying to put a name around the thing that we ultimately all want, which is, was the dude who came to my porch dropping a package off or picking my lock?
But
Right?
if it's
Like,
trying to put a name to something we already do, why are people trying to build a technology around it and saying you have to buy this multi-million-dollar technology and implement it to have XDR and be successful?
I mean, you gotta sell things on the truck to like. I mean, Neil, that's a pessimistic answer, but
It is. It
um,
is.
look, and um, sometimes I think Gartner created this market, right?
Mm,
Like they named it, they created it,
mm-hmm,
and I'll credit them because like they did the same thing with EDR,
mm-hmm.
right? But I think ultimately XDR for me is, do I have the right data sources that speak the same language that I can then start to contextually put together? And we've all attempted to do this. I've attempted to do it through Splunk or through a third party or through logarithm. Like, I mean, look, I'm not going
Did
to
you
pick
just
on
say
any,
logarithm?
but but no, but like it's tough, right? To be able to record every packet that comes into, like that's a tough equation. But I think as a guide point to the future of where we need to be, it's a good guide point. I I need machines to understand, like I need a machine to understand the abstracted language of a vulnerability, and then to be able to do something about that vulnerability, right? Prevent it, detect it, respond, all the loops that we do. So I think it is a good guide point. I do think it'll push vendors um, to take disparate solutions and bring them together so that they speak a common language. And so it actually helps teams. And so I am hopeful from a future perspective, but it's one of I think I told you this on our call. Like when I say XDR, I'm like, from the side of my mouth, I'm saying XDR, but really I'm saying data analytics fueled by the right data sources and telemetry.
Well, and I think that's really the crux of it. And so I want to pick apart, maybe some of the other things that you mentioned as well, because I think those are important to really kind of talk about, right? Is Gartner, you bring up Gartner, and they're the ones who coined XDR similar to the way that they coined EDR. Do you think, and not to pick on Gartner or Forrester or anybody like that, but do you think that that's out of demand for the industry to create a new category because we have to create something to continue to drive innovation in the space, or do you think it's pressure from the industry to create a new category so that new vendors can have their name on a Gartner chart that's different than maybe some of the Gartner charts that they're falling behind on? And I know that's an incredibly cynical question to ask, but
No, it is, and I'm a cynic about it. It's one of those weird things. I would say I've gotten a broader perspective since coming over to the vendor side, frankly speaking. Um, I was real jaded about third parties coming into represent the vendor, like real jaded, because the results of the testing didn't always equal
mm-hmm.
what I thought they should, or how I would do the testing. And I won't pick on any particular one. Um, so so look, I guess I'll chalk it up to, is it the business and the way InfoSec's done, or is it um, or is it an unnecessary thing that's not needed? I don't truly know the answer to that, Neil. I think I like third parties that do a great job at really doing as real world style of testing as possible. Like the things I would always buy products based on were like, who do I think is doing the best testing and how do I think they're doing it? And does it represent how my team would do it? And then I could shortlist them, right? Did I put a lot of stock in Gartner reports and Forrester reports? No, but my CIO counterparts did.
Mm-hmm.
Like truly did. Like, so I can't say that it's needed and I can't say it's unneeded. Like it's one of those, I think I'd like it to be different. I
Yeah.
think is the way I would express it. I'd like it to work a little different. I would like, I would like the recipients of those reports to not be jaded by their own cynicism, rightfully or wrongfully, to say the only reason that this report is coming out is because of X,
Yeah.
because it's influenced by money.
Right.
Like, no, I just want people who are generally interested in helping me identify better outcomes. And so I think for me, I look at it as an opportunity to influence, right? And say, because now I get a direct line to organizations like that, right? To influence and make it better. But do I think it meets 100% of the? No, none of them do.
I
Like I
think.
think MITRE attack testing is the closest.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I think
Right?
Miter's probably the only, if you were to look at like Forrester, Gartner, and Miter, right, as those three. I think Miter is kind of the only one that's now viewed as probably the most impartial of the three. I think everybody's so jaded by Forrester and Gartner, and that's why I thought it was interesting when you bring up Gartner introducing XDR, because I think immediately a lot of us go to, well, then it's just a financial reason why XDR gets added to a Gartner chart.
Yeah, and for me, like I would just like to eliminate that from my mind. Like, because sometimes it's correct to be cynical, sometimes it's not.
Yeah,
So I'd like to just eliminate it from my mind and go like, okay, I know how they make their decisions.
yeah, yeah,
And I can say this: there's great people all around,
yeah.
right? I get to interact with them, I get to meet them. I don't believe anybody's being shady. You know what I mean? Like I think everybody from their own perspective is trying to be as truthful and honest as possible, but there's a lot that goes into that. Those reports that come out.
I think the way to put it is right. Everybody has the best intentions when they put out those Gartner reports, but
Right.
at the same time, everybody's got to make money at the same time.
Yeah, and then you get into the business of infosec, not the business of infosec, but like the
Right.
business. It's a business. It's a business, and that's been not only enlightening. I think coming over to the vendor side, because I don't want to put any of that stuff in a negative context, because I've taken none of it negatively.
Right.
Just I feel like I have a better understanding of weeding through all the things and going like, okay, here's where I lend credibility, here's where I don't lend credibility. You shouldn't make your decisions solely based on what one person has to say ever
Right.
in this industry. But yeah, for me, it was always about like who's speaking the closest to reality. That's who I want to go do business with and be partners with. Um, and there are great vendors. There are great third parties that are just trying to do their best. So again, like I think it's just it's part of how we do business, and it's on each of us to go try to drive change in it.
Sec IT guy asked, can you summarize XDR for some individuals? So can you kind of go back through kind of what, when you look at where you're at, in the industry and things like that, how, if you were talking to somebody, how would you, define XDR based on, maybe what your vision or goals or what you think you're actually going to drive towards in terms of trying to make XDR something significant for the industry?
Yeah, I think the best way to think of XDR is to I'm going to use another real world analogy, and I'm going to use a banking analogy, and I'm going to use vantage of cameras, and I could do the same thing with casinos, right? It doesn't matter, but people who want to protect physical real world assets from getting robbed, they have cameras deployed. Those cameras have a certain context. Maybe some of those cameras turn on when there's motion. Maybe some of them run 24/7. Maybe some of them only record based on an anomaly, like all of these things, right? And so I think XDR is the representation of all of those vantage points talking together at once to be able to say, was a behavior that someone who came into my bank, like, do they have ill intent? Do they not have ill intent? How quickly up the stream of the attack chain can I move to disrupt those? Um, so again, all it is blending all of those different contexts of the cameras. One of the cameras is going to be pointed at the identity from a cyber perspective. One of those cameras is going to be pointed at the endpoint and the system anomalies. One of those cameras is going to be pointed at the network. But today, it is a correct statement to say they all speak different languages.
Yeah.
But if we could get to the same language, and then we could get to better anomaly detection over those same language sets, well, cool. Like, Neil, you know this, dude. How many times is it like, oh, I wish I would have had a full PCAP
Yes.
for
Yes.
like the last 60 days?
Yes.
Or someone from an endpoint perspective saying, well, I wish I had 60 days worth of data. Because if I had 60 days worth of PCAP, 60, but it's a hard, like that in an enterprise, that's a hard challenge to achieve, right? Blending those together and then taking what was the identity doing the entire time. Now we're getting to a place where I can put the full picture, right? If you think about yourself as a detective, you have questions, you need to go answer those questions. If I can blend those data sets together to answer the questions and then provide great analytics, well, now I'm doing a really amazing job at prevention, detection, and response. Whereas today, everybody has their own camera pointed at their own area of interest. And we haven't gotten together to put those areas of interest together. So for me, XDR represents that. Let's put the camera pictures together. I want a full recording of when someone walks in my building and I know what they're doing and sticking a all the way to sticking a USB stick in. That's all. That's all it is.
I think Cyber Roflo has got a pretty good analogy for this too, right? Just like when I was in auto tech with the Snap-on or Matco truck coming through, we have this new wrench that does the same job as the wrench you have, but it can give you more access by bending 5 degrees more, and you can get the job done faster.
It's close.
Close?
It's close. My caveat to that would be we've never had another period in time where we've had a tool close to that. And it's not these data sets are massive, right? So again, like we had to leave some hurdles on data storage, data analytics for each one of these cameras, and each one of them has had benefit, no doubt. Like I needed better network detection. I could name the number of products I've bought in the IPS IDS space, right? I threw my lot in with one EDR vendor, but I was a fan of all of them. I have friends that have worked for all of them. Like, but at the end of the day, it's like, but your ATM camera is still not talking to your street camera, which still isn't talking to your business camera. Like, what if they all talk the same language? And what if I can interrogate them the whole time period that I wanted? I believe, like, if I had to dial up a thing that I needed, I wouldn't call it XDR. Frankly speaking, I wouldn't. But that's what someone else called it, and I'm gonna ride that because we need it.
Yeah.
So if we can get that to give me the unique perspective on what the attacker's doing when they put a mask on and pull a gun out inside my bank, right, and attempt to hit the vault or attempt to hit the safety deposit boxes, that gives me situational awareness. I can move to disrupt them. Sweet. Like that's where I want to be at. So I'll be honest with you, Neil. I don't give a shit what anybody calls it.
Right.
If they call it XDR and everybody's behind it and has a banner, I'm not swimming upstream from that.
The last jab that I'll get at XDR, and then we'll move on to another controversial topic, is what's the difference between Gartner saying we have to have this XDR concept, and therefore all the vendors run out and try to create almost a middleware tool that everybody has to have for for this seamless communication between all the tools, versus the industry coming back and saying from this point forward you all will adopt this common communication protocol. Why are we choosing the yet another piece of technology that I have to buy and put into my security stack versus trying to coalesce as an industry around a common language that we all speak to each other?
I'll point to a free market on that one.
I thought
I know that sounds weird. Like I'm definitely pro free market, so don't take it as like I'm into free market, but competitors got to compete, right? And unfortunately, in InfoSec, it's the same way. Like,
Yeah.
fortunately and unfortunately, like there's good benefits we all get from giant amounts of money being thrown at R&D to go create an innovative solution. Like, no doubt. But then it does cause some issues, which is like we can't get together and standardize because we don't like this particular company. Now, what I can say from my vantage point and my particular viewpoint of who I work for and where I'm at, there's not many companies who are technology neutral and power everybody. So I'm hopeful that I happen to work for that organization,
Yeah.
like the organization that like powers everybody and has a huge amount of influence. Um, but I think, look, I will also say this: it's changed, Neil.
Yeah.
The last 5-6 years, like the people who have gotten into jobs like myself at other companies, I'm like I meet with Silence people. Like one of the best dudes at Silence was like my best friend. All we cared about is better protecting endpoints.
That's right.
We had a difference of opinion on how that's achieved or sold or, all those things, right? But like fundamentally, we were like, yo, we have antivirus. Antivirus is terrible. Can we do something better than antivirus, right? And I was with anybody on
there
that journey.
goes the antivirus hammer.
Right. But look, I was on anybody on that journey.
Yeah.
I think you would say that too.
Yeah.
Like we needed something different. And so it's like, yeah, putting down the old way we used to do business and saying like, I represent this vendor, or our way is the best way. Like that's not the best way. Like no one wants that. What people want is like cooperation. They want a community that's rowing in the same direction. Threat intel has been a good example of this, where like now it's standard how we share threat intel, those things. Cool. Now let's take threat intel to version 3.0. Let's make it even more cooler. Let's stop doing IOCs.
Oh
Let's do
gosh.
contextual based,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I think XDR will help threat intel as well. But again, like I'm not in marketing. I don't create, all these new things. I just look at it and go, how can I ride the wave of excitement to achieve my goals? Ultimately, which is like detecting them faster than disrupting them once they're inside my house.
I think Sec IT guy agrees with you. He goes, he sits on it looks like he or she sits on a Splunk instance that's like 20 indexers and 60 plus source types. And so if there's a clearer picture, he's all for it.
No, look, like I had this conversation the other day. With everything, there's an infrastructure. And specifically it was around CyberArk. Right. And I happen to believe in that technology, but I also believe it takes a long time to implement. There's a big infrastructure. Splunk the same way.
Right.
All I would say to anybody running any of that stuff is, are you getting the outcomes that you're paying for? And each one of those has a cost, and you should be able to calculate the ROIs and the outcomes that you want to drive. If you do, great. Stick with the technology. I'll never convince you to do something like to change what's working for you. If you don't, it's time to make a switch to something that is going to work for you. But look, I will say this, man, XDR, I don't know how it started. I honestly don't. But I know within 2 months, every vendor was reacting to it. Every vendor was already gearing engineering to do it.
They were marketing the hell out of it.
Is it the thing that I need? Right? Like we do want the full picture. I want the whole thing. I want from the clicks on the keyboard to they land on I want that full picture as much as I can get it. And so is it bad? No. I think it pushes us all to get that bigger picture. I think looking at it uniformly from a one vendor perspective is probably bad.
Yeah.
But as long as everybody's partnering and sharing the same taxonomy and backend, cool. We'll make progress.
Well said. All right, we're gonna take a move on to kind of another controversial topic to kind of dive into because that's the way we roll out here, and so we've talked about this on the stream before, and we'll it showed up in the news here recently, and so I wanted to kind of pick the scab and make it bleed a little bit more, right? Is we talked about the indictment of Uber's CISO for paying off hackers that had hacked into their company and stolen some customer data and then ended up hiding it under the guise of a bug bounty program. This ultimately obviously led to the indictment of Uber's CISO. I think he's now, I think he's over at Cloudflare or somewhere like that. doing work over there, and ultimately trying to hide it under that bug bounty program ended up proving to be rather false. And so, the title is a little bit clickbaity, but I thought it was. I think there was one good stat in there that I want to talk about, and then Rick, I want to ask you a couple questions about it. But it said that in a recent poll, 70 out of 100 CISOs said it was common practice for general counsel's office to notify authorities, when a cyber incident occurs. And so now, Rick, I know you've spent some time as a CISO. You've consulted with CISOs. You talk to them, on a very, very regular basis. Can you kind of share with us what it's like to be in that hot seat and to kind of be faced with that on the spot decision about whether you decide to lie to the board or lie to your boss or attempt to cover up something as significant as something like this? Like, what's it like to be under that pressure, and what's that stress level like?
It sucks. The day it happens and the day you realize it happens, it's a fucking bad day, man. As a leader who cares about the thing that they do, like you missed. You can chalk it up to a user clicked on a thing, so you start with, holy shit, I missed, and I missed on the thing I committed to a company to doing. Like the rest of the work doesn't matter. The infinity projects, the blood, the sweat, the hours, it doesn't matter. Like what matters is, end of the day, you were hired to protect the organization and they got busted up. And it's a bad day, right? So you have all those personal feelings wrapped up. You have professional failure wrapped up in it. I can tell you that, like, it's a sucky ass day. Like it really is. You question everything. You question the decisions you made along the way. Question all that stuff. I can say, and I'm gonna put some generalizations on this because I know a lot of people who run a lot of programs, and I know a lot of ethical people. Generally speaking, security provides the facts that they know them up to that point, and they're committed to that. They might not have all the telemetry, they might not have all the tools, but whatever tools they do have and whatever telemetry they do have, they're trying to inform the senior people in the company of like the data as they know it. Like I don't personally know CISOs who hide data, right? Like I don't, and maybe they exist and they probably do, but I don't know those people. I know people who are very ethical, who operate on the premise of I was hired to protect this company and I'm going to operate in that best interest at all times. And I don't, and Neil, you're one of these people too. Like, I don't think that's a thing we sign, it's just like the type of people that we are, right? Like
It's just baked into us.
Yeah. Like a big part of us is like, we want to protect people. That's what we do. Right. And so it's a fucked up day. Like, honestly, like, frankly speaking, it's a super bad day. And I personally have a hard time second guessing decisions or like things because I don't have the full picture. Now, what I will say is, generally speaking, here's what's going to happen in a company. You're going to realize you had that oh shit moment. You're going to realize something bad happened. You're immediately going to contact your boss, and your boss or you are immediately going to talk to HR and public relations and legal. Whatever happens at that point, as a professional, the way I took it was I did my job. I informed people who should make decisions on behalf of the company. I am not the CEO of the company. I am not the chief legal officer. I'm not the chief financial officer. They hired me to assess them a risk and tell them the best information that I had. And so once I provided it to them, I did my job, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, that doesn't always hold true to be the case. And like, I've known people who are thrown on the bus by their organizations when clearly the organization didn't do the right things, right? And I don't mean spend $20 million on security. I don't mean put in 50 controls. I mean just like the right thing, like take security seriously, or those things, right? And so I always have a hard time commenting on like specific cases because I know some people involved, those things. But it's a bad day. And then, like, what do we feel like? So let's internalize this to us for a second. we feel like, holy shit, my company that said they trusted me, that I felt like trusted me, now I'm on this ledge by myself. And what's the easy answer is it must have been the head of security's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Like it must have been our fault that something happened. And look, it's not exclusive to InfoSec. Companies that care about safety have done this to other leaders, and they, right, like accidents happen, and then people get fired. The unfortunate part of that is if you do that for 3 or 4 stints at an organization, you start to get real jaded. Maybe you start to exclude data, like maybe you don't inform people when you don't 100% know that it was a breach,
Mm-hmm.
right? For all those reasons. But I generally, like the people I work with, like generally do care. They generally try to give the source of truth to people who can make decisions. But for a number of reasons, it gets messed up. It gets messed up for legal reasons. It gets messed up for privacy, like, or culture of the company.
I think you make a really good point in terms of let's not quarterback Uber specific incident because we weren't there and things like that. But I think a couple months ago when we first started the stream, we did have an incident responder on the stream, and we talked about like what that stress was like, being an incident responder and having to deal with a high profile incident and things like that. And how does that incident responder handle that stress? I think one of the things we haven't had on the show, and I'll kind of take this opportunity with you here to ask you this, is when you're in that CISO seat, what is the best way to handle that pressure? What are you thinking about in that moment of that breach? I mean, outside of the old shit moment and oh my gosh, I've let my organization down, but in the midst of that incident and in the midst of that containment eradication phase of the incident response process, what's going through your head, or how are you handling that stress that's being put on you from an organization perspective?
What's funny about that question, Neil? When I started my career moving towards manager and director and VP and CISO, I thought like you had to be breach free to make it to that CISO level. And then I would say probably like 10 years ago, I flipped my mindset on that, and I was like, oh, it's a requirement that you've been through a breach.
Oh, really?
To go be a CISO. Yeah, to go be like, I was like, oh, now it's on your resume. Like like companies are hiring, and do you have friends? Like I have tons of friends that wanted that experience of like, what's it like when you get breached and have to go through the public disclosure?
Right.
Like it was so prevalent that it became like, that's part of the job requirement as opposed to 0 incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I start, that was my optimism when I started the industry was I'm gonna roll with 0 incidents. Like no one's getting my shit.
My whole career, no incidents.
No incidents. I'm gonna go, and that'll be how I prove to people that they should hire me.
Right.
Turns out people want people with experience going through that journey because they know it was so prevalent that companies were getting busted up, right? Again, I'll point back to, I think what we try to do is provide the people who should make decisions in the company with the best data that we have. I don't generally feel like we bullshit on any of that stuff. I feel like we're pretty honest. Like, we think this is the likely case, even if we don't have telemetry. Here's how certain we are. As we've gotten better telemetry, cool. Now we can get more assertive in what happened. But so I would say easy scapegoat for companies in the early running. Easy scapegoat to say, hey, head of safety is the reason that we had a truck explode, like a gas truck explode, right?
Right.
So as a company who comes from that background, easy to say it must have been my security person's fault that we didn't have 100% absolute security. I think, culture matters. The people in your org matter. I've been very optimistic, frankly speaking, Neil. I've met with a lot of CISOs that have been through 3 or 4 breaches in a row. And I mean like big ass shit, like headline stuff.
Right.
And their organizations didn't get rid of them. They knew they're the right leaders. They knew they were going to make mistakes along the way. But I'll credit each one of those CISOs for spending the time with their people to get them to understand the complexity of the problem, and then understand that in any journey to be a thing, like you're going to fail along that journey. Just like have some patience, and it's benefited each one of those orgs that they've stuck with that same leader.
So I'm glad to hear you say that you're optimistic about it, because I think that only makes one of us, of the two of us. I think I'm still very pessimistic about it. I think the industry as a whole still hasn't adopted a breach requirement, for CISOs when it comes to resume items, and I think CISOs are still very much burned by, examples like Target and Home Depot and other organizations where, as soon as a breach happens, the CISO is out. And I think a lot of CISOs still plan their 3-year rotation at an organization around making sure that they stay, they stay breach free. And so do you really think that we're really going to see more adoption of that? Or, I still feel like just with everything that's going on, we're still seeing CISOs as scapegoats.
Yes and no. I would say like top of the pyramid, like top 1% of the 1% of security teams. I don't believe that they feel that. I think it's an easy. Again, I'll point downstream with insecure or immature CEOs, CFOs. Look, America's made up of small businesses, and sometimes those small businesses blow up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same people when they blow up and make $2 billion in revenue that it was when they were making $1 million in revenue, right? Like, I think you have to invest time in that staff. You have to get them to understand the position that you're in. And I think there's ways to articulate that and all that stuff. But ultimately, like, I have been encouraged. Like, I've also been discouraged. This is one of the weird ones for me, Neil. Because I see some major examples where, like, holy shit, and I'm not going to name any names,
sure,
but like, how did X get walked from this company when they were leading them in the right direction, when they were doing all the right things, happen to get hit by a foreign adversary? And the foreign adversaries are always going to hit you where you're unprepared. But are they the wrong? But now you're making decisions on a leader based around a tactical issue. And so I'll give you an example. Would the same company fire the CIO if they had a 5-minute outage or 10-minute outage? I highly doubt that would be the case. Like, it does happen where CIOs get walked because availability gets wonky. But, like, come on, afford us the same respect as, like, CIOs, where it's like they've conditioned their companies that there's going to be outages sometimes, and there's nothing they can do. You said 5 nines. I designed all my systems for 5 nines. But that 6-9, it goes down sometimes, right? Yeah, so I think as CISOs, like, we have to equivalently go into our C level and just level set that, like, shit's gonna happen, man. But are you gonna fire me for every failure along the way? And some of them are big issues that you got to work through. Like, we're not talking you're gonna go fix the culture of a security, of a company in a year or 18 months. No, that's a 5 to 7 year journey, right? So I think as leaders, we got to level set that expectation for the people hiring us. And then I think as organizations and the leaders of those organizations, this is a reality of doing business these days.
Mm-hmm.
Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
Like I actually say that's actually worse for your program.
Yeah.
Like, even a mediocre leader on the right direction, executing the top 20 CIS controls, and he's a mediocre leader or she's a mediocre leader, will get you further than firing people every 18 months. Like,
I'm on that same boat with you. I think that's I want to see that shift in that direction. I think you made a really good point. I think that's something I hadn't really ever thought of before, which is, you've got companies that have CEOs when they were, $1 million company, and then they blew up to a $1 billion company, and they didn't mature with that jump. And I think that's a very, very apt, kind of distinction to make there between, between those two types of CEOs. And I think that very much is probably one of the things that we do see inside the industry. So that's a very apt kind of analogy that you've got there.
Yeah, what, 95% of companies in America are small businesses? Is
Yeah,
that right, Neil? That
something
sounds
like
right.
that. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been part of two companies that went from you could do whatever the shit you wanted. You weren't publicly regulated. You know, like, and then all of a sudden you're publicly regulated. You're on the public markets. You did as a CEO, you did all the things you wanted to do with your company.
Yeah.
Like you went from 10 customers to millions of customers. Awesome.
Mm,
But did you mature along that journey too?
exactly.
Well, look, as the leaders of security, we have to go spend time with them. We have to educate them, and it's not easy. It takes patience, and you got to spend time with the people that you want to influence. So spend time with them. Like most of the time, we're spending too much time in the tech.
Yeah.
If we could pull back and have enough time, we could influence the people greatly.
Absolutely. I think that's a real positive point to end on. I'm going to go ahead and remind our viewers that are viewing right now, get in your last minute questions. We are coming up to the top of the hour. Everybody hang tight for a little bit. Don't bounce out of the channel just yet. We are going to go raid another, our random hacker streamers. That are out there right now that need some community support, and so we will be doing a channel raid here in a little bit. But Rick, I want to thank you very much on behalf of everybody on the stream, on behalf of myself. It's always a pleasure to have you on the stream. I can't thank you enough for coming out here and doing this with me. I want to turn it over to you and see if you've got any closing remarks or anything that you want to say to everybody before we sign off for the night.
Yeah, my last closing remarks are going to be a couple of things. One, no one's coming to fix this problem with us, and I mean all of us. Like developers, people on the red, on the blue, on the purple. Like this is us. This is our tribe. So what are we going to do with this tribe, right? I also think that it's important to highlight people who are trying to do it differently, and Neil is one of those people. It's been awesome to run around the world and meet with people where you're like, holy shit, we just click, and like we're trying to do a thing that's bigger than us. Like we really are. And I think Neil's one of those people. I think the people on this chat are some of those people. And so can any one of us move it forward? No, absolutely not. Like that's not how any of this works, right? But like good people who get together and continue conversations and continue to drive, man, that's what we need. So look, at InfoSec Rick on Twitter, like hit me up. Like I guarantee I will respond to you. It might take me like a week, but I have an SLA. I have an SLA for myself, which is if somebody sends me a thing within a week, I try to respond to that on any platform. Um, but look, I know where Neil's heart is. I know where a lot of other people and that's the people that I spend time with. That's the people that I'm trying to do and change the game. And hopefully we're doing that for people. So find your tribe, get together with your tribe and drive the change that you want to see. And we'll get there. Like it's our time. Like I can't remember another time in InfoSec, Neil. Tell me if I'm wrong, where people wanted to listen to us. They want us in the room, right? And
Yeah.
so it's on each and every one of us to be able to walk in that room competently, to be able to explain our position, and to be able to say the things that we're going to do to move the needle. If we can do that consistently as 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 50,000 people, dope. We're going to get the future that we want. If we don't fight that fight, we'll get the same results over and over again.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Rick, I'm gonna put you back over in the holding room and ask you to hang tight in Zoom real quick while we go do this raid. Thanks everybody for tuning in to tonight for tonight's cyber insecurity stream. Remember, you can catch us on here every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Don't forget about all the exciting stuff that we've got coming up. I want to thank. We had two new gifted subs go out throughout the entire stream. Thank you, Festivus, for that, and for gifting those subs out. Remember, if you like the stream, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're super like us, hit that subscribe button. Looking forward to seeing everybody on the next stream, and hang tight. We're gonna go raid another hacker's Twitch channel here real quick. So for up to the minute cybersecurity news, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Cyber and Security channel on Twitch and YouTube. Also, make sure you turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live.